to deliver this oration. R.L. Kapur is one of founding members of NIAS. Here are some pictures and few points from his biography, his biographical points. And here are pictures from our archive to show how he has been involved right from the beginning. I request Professor B.V. Srikantan to come over and speak a few words. Professor Srikantan himself is one of our founding members and has worked with Professor R.L. Kapur right from the inception of when NIAS started and was functional. I request Professor.
Good morning to all of you. It so happens that I met Professor Kapur in Dr. Radhamana's office in the Indian Institute of Science guest house. This was in 1988 when the NIAS had just started and there was no other place except in two guest rooms in the IISc where NIAS was founded. Dr. Radhamana told me this is Professor Kapur, who is from NIMHANS, and he is going to be associated with NIAS in various capacities. The next time I met him was in Pune, where the first school was organized by Professor Kapur for the IIS officers. And I was also asked to give a talk by Dr. Ramana, and I gave a course of 2 lectures on the first of the schools. Then, in 1990, I came here. The next 2 years, the schools were held in different places. The first school was held in Pune at the Tata Management Center. The second school was held, I think, in Jamshedpur. And the third one in Bengaluru, but I don't know where the location was, and I was not present there. The fourth school again, I came here. Before that, I had met Dr. Radharamana, and they had moved to the alumni, what is now the alumni office. That was the office of NIAS. And after talking to me for some time, I was supposed to go to US at that time for a couple of years in connection with some satellite experiment, which I had committed myself. But then Dr. Radharamana prevailed on me to stay back and go after some time and help him with the NIAS to the extent possible. So I agreed, and he called Ravi Kapur and told him that he has agreed to join NIAS as Radhakrishnan professor. You give him the necessary letter and things like that. Because the person who was actually officiating at that time as the officer was Professor Ravi Kapur, and there was only one administrative assistant, that is Mr. David, who was the former administrative officer of IISc. Then, of course, I came here after I retired from TR4 as a Srinivas Ramanujan professor in 92 August. And from then on, of course, Dr. Kapur and I were very close because I wanted to work not in the field of physics at that time, but in the area of philosophy of science, and particularly on projects relating to philosophical and scientific studies on consciousness. So I went to Professor Kapur and told him this is the subject on which I am going to work here. He said, very well, how long will you stay here for doing these experiments? Doing these studies. I told him, you see, my appointment is for 5 years, so at least for 5 years I am here. Then he laughed And he said, in 5 years, you will only scratch the surface of this problem of consciousness studies. Now, after 22 years, I feel what he said is very true. I am still scratching the surface of the problem of consciousness because nobody has been able to solve the deeper problems of consciousness studies. Now, of course, when I came here, there were only a couple of books in that field. Today, there are hundreds of books, but still the problem is not solved. It was always a great pleasure to interact with Professor Kapur. He was a man of great learning, particularly in the field of psychological sciences, and he did very many wonderful things. You know, he interviewed the sadhus in the Himalayas to find out what is their objective and what is it that motivated them to become sadhus, give up normal life and go to Himalayas and be sadhus. Then he also interviewed the terrorists. You know, at that time, in the late 80s and early 90s, the terrorism was a big problem in Punjab. So he went to Punjab and then interviewed some of the terrorists through some million people. He also had a student who was working on the motivation and methodology of scientists. I think many of the professors in Institute of Science were interviewed by Sushmita, who was his first year student. In fact, it so happens that I think, as far as NIAS is concerned, the first PhD is Sushmita, who got a PhD under Professor Kapur. Well, it was a great shock for us in 2006 when suddenly we heard that he was no more. But NIAS lost a great person who built this institution in many ways, who was actually the right-hand man of Professor Agarahana in many ways, right from the days. I would be happy to invite you for the concluding lecture here.
Thank you, Professor Srikantan. I request now Professor Das and Professor Shekhar to take their seat in the dais, please. Professor Das and his works are familiar to many over here, but I have a duty to perform. He was born in 1934 in a remote village in Odisha. He grew up amidst loving rural folks and nature's splendor, but also had the horrific experience of a devastating cyclone followed by a famine crushing his locality. At the age of 8, he stood witness to his affluent home on the sea being plundered by savage gangs of bandits, not once but twice. Writing came to him spontaneously, and his first book on Odia was published when he was 14. At 15, he launched Diganta, which in course of time grew into a significant literary journal in the state. His quest, however, led him to mysticism, and after serving as a lecturer in English at Cuttack for 4 years, he, along with his wife, Pratigna Devi, a scion of Raj family of Kujang, whose parents were renowned freedom fighters, joined the Sri Aurobindo ashram at Pondicherry in 1963, which became their permanent abode. Though outside his home state, he is widely known as one of the best loved and serious among the Indian writers writing in English. He also probably the foremost successful bilingual writer in the country. He had been a regular columnist in literary and cultural themes for some of the major newspapers in India as the Times of India, the Hindustan Times, the Hindu, and major Odia dailies. The numerous accolades he has received include India's National Award for Creative Writing, the Sahitya Academy Award, the Odia Sahitya Academy Award twice, the Sarala Award, the Bharatiya Bhasha Parishad. The Odia Sahitya Academy also bestowed on him its highest honor, the Atibadi Jagannath Das Samman. The President of India decorated him with Padma Award. This was followed by India's most prestigious award for literature, the Saraswati Samman. Utkal Sahitya Samaj in Odia bestowed on him Utkal Ratna, while one university made him the honorary professor emeritus. 5 universities have bestowed on him D.Lit. There's a long list of things I can read out, but I have chosen one or two of his one lecture that I would like to read out. He was chosen to deliver the first UNESCO lecture organized by the Department of Education, Ministry of Human Resources and Development, Government of India in 1998 at National Museum Auditorium, New Delhi. He is one of those living writers on whom maximum number of scholars have done their doctoral thesis either in English or in Odia. I now request Professor Shetter, who has similar research interests of the kind of the topic he's going to speak today, and he's an honorary professor here who's familiar to all of us. I request Professor Shetter to take over, chair the session, and introduce.
We'll speak a few words. Okay.
Good morning. I had heard so much about Professor Manoj Das from my very close friends in Odisha. And believe me, I have a large number of friends in Odisha. Nearly all the Mahapatras are my friends. And there are Mahapatras who have worked in the field of anthropology, archaeology, and also literature. One of the Mahapatras who was here, heading the first, as the first director of the Central Institute of Languages in Mysore. We are still friends, and they are still alive, and they are as old as myself, and some of them are older than me. I had also a friend who headed once, he was the Vice Chancellor of Utkal University, and I had an occasion to get an invitation from him to go and see him. He was also a professor of English literature. We were batchmates in Cambridge. And he and his wife were our family friends. And whenever we met, I was always told about Professor Manoj Das, who is a bilingual scholar and who is stuck in Pondicherry. I have not read much of his writings, unfortunately, but I will catch up. But I heard such a lot to say that I cannot compare myself, him with anyone that I know of. Of course, all the accolades which he has received, he has deservedly received. What is very interesting to me is to see that he is a bilingual author and he has made mark in both the languages. I am struggling to make some mark in one of the two, although I claim to be a bilingual writer myself. Today's topic is also of great interest to me because you talk about the love and death. I have dabbled with the death in 2 volumes, of Inviting Death and Pursuing Death, and I look forward to listen to you. Sir, we are privileged to have you here, and we look forward to your lecture. And this is a wonderful occasion because we had a very distinguished scholar in Professor Kapur. I had an occasion to be with him, we know him for 4 years. Although those only 4 years, unfortunately, he was snatched away from us. We felt that we know for almost decades, for 2 reasons. One is, when I came to know that Ravi Kapur is married to Malavika, my ability to link up with the family became very, very easy, because Malavi's father was a great writer in Kannada, and I had always admired him. I had met him several times only to get. He is a legend in the field of Kannada literature. He is an encyclopedic man. And when I came to know that Malavika is his wife, I felt to see that whatever their connection is in psychiatry, for me, it is a very happy combination. We lost him before we could realize the importance of this person, and unfortunately, he is no longer with us. But his work, his lovable behavior, and the way in which he used to treat all of us are clean in our mind. And it's a wonderful thing that you are delivering the lecture, the annual lecture of this great man. I welcome you on behalf of the staff and the colleagues and the other members, the invitees of NIAS, and I look forward to your lecture. Please.
President, sir, friends, I think I'll skip the formality of thanking the President and Rajneeji for having spoken very kind words about me. I am grateful to the sponsors of this event for having given me this chance to pay my homage to one of the really genuine scholars whom not only I respected but I loved. The very first occasion when the oration was introduced, it was so sweet of Dr. Malavi Kapur to contact me and to offer me the chance to speak. I had my difficulties, I could not come. But today I must confess what unconsciously restrained me from coming over here. Over the decades past, I had to speak. I had to give memorial orations instituted in the names of some of the great people. But to speak a memorial lecture, to give a memorial lecture for one who was junior to me in age, it was very painful for me. But I have got over that restraint. I know that Ravi Kapur, a man like Ravi Kapur, is not to be measured in terms of years, in terms of longevity. He was greater than the years he lived. And certainly, I take it as a great opportunity to pay my homage to him. Well, I must tell you why I chose this subject. People told me, some people, that he was an atheist. I do not know. He might have proclaimed himself sometimes as a pragmatist or as a rationalist. But atheist? Of course, there is a sentence in Sri Aurobindo which amounts like this: a genuine atheist is the surest traveler towards the destination of divinity. And I remember first time I met him in Bengaluru, some friend introduced me to him casually. Same evening, I was to give a talk. I do not know, I don't remember where it was, but it was a very large audience. And my subject was literature vis-a-vis spirituality or something like that. Aditi may remember, I do not remember. Anand Kondaji had organized it. And when the meeting was over, out of the crowd emerged Dr. Ravi Kapur and Dr. Srimati Malavika, the daughter of the distinguished writer for whom I had nothing but reverence. And they escorted me to a tea stall or somewhere, I have forgotten, they offered me tea. I could hear Ravi Kapur murmuring in a soliloquy, I have got my man. I didn't understand what it was, but then he told me about the proposed camp of senior executives, government and private, to take place at Jamshedpur, and where some people will speak on. The philosophy was that bound to that tapism, they've forgotten the other rasas of life. So they must have once in a while be awakened to the thrill of literature, music, history, etc., philosophy. And I was asked to speak to them about how to appreciate good literature. I think for about 5 years I used to come. Jamshedpur began there, and then this NIAS was not there. Somewhere it used to take place, and last time I had, of course, come there to this building. It was in a very primary stage, many years have passed. His last visit to Pondicherry was before he departed to Italy and before he finally departed from us. A few months ago, he came to Pondicherry. And we were discussing about the enigma of death. In snatches, once or two small brief meetings. Probably, I had introduced to him a book published in 1979, The Conquest of Death by Alvin Silverstein, a very well-known American physicist. It was a sensation then. He had announced in that book that the 4 major killers, in the American context of course, cancer, diabetes, heart ailments and accident. Out of these 4 major killers in the United States of America, sure panacea should be invented during the coming decade. Cancer, diabetes and all heart-related diseases would be eliminated. The last 2 lines of the famous book were like this: my readers, if you can survive this decade, you may be one of the members of the first generations of immortals, not immortals, immortals, that is, you are not obliged to die. Well, I think Ravi Kapur commented on this book also in one of his articles published in some prestigious professional journal. I remember having read it. Hardly a year had passed. There struck what is known as AIDS, defeating all these calculations of futurologists and particularly psycho-medical futurologists. I did not have the occasion to discuss about this with him, but I wanted to discuss with him. I remembered when AIDS came into picture and nullifying the prediction of Alvin Silverstein, I wanted to bring this to his notice, Dr. Kapur's notice. There is a footnote towards in the last but 6 chapters of Life Divine of Sri Aurobindo, which practically deals on the subject of consciousness, which is his pet subject, doctrinal contents. Now he says, a day may come when science, occult science, will discover the cause of death and announce that henceforth people may become immortal. But immortality cannot be achieved until the inner being, the soul, has found an appropriate medium for its continuously progressive expression, that is to say the body, unless it has got an appropriate body which is plastic enough to express the inner urge of consciousness for progression, growing further and further towards light. Death cannot be eliminated. How true the prediction appeared at that time when this AIDS came after Alvin Silverstein's famous prophecy. And probably what I would have discussed with him, I am going to present in a very poor way. Believe me, my friends, I am no scholar at all. I am a creative writer, definitely. And I have strayed into certain fields like out of my ordinary interest and what I know as my faith, I will present to you. You know, it's a very hard subject. Several thousand years ago, nobody has been able to pinpoint the time of the writing of the Valmiki Ramayana. But you would all remember, there is a dialogue between Yaksha and Yudhishthira. Wonderful questions and wonderful answers. The answers still hold good. What is vaster than the earth? One's mother's consciousness is vaster than one's earth. What is higher than the heavens? The Father's love is higher than the heavens, etc., etc. What is it by giving up which one never grows poor? Desire. The more desire I have, comparatively they are not fulfilled, I am poorer by the degrees. One of the questions is, what is most surprising, astonishing on this earth? And Yudhishthira's answer is, ahani bhutani gacchanti jama mandir, etc., etc. Every moment people are dying, but those who are alive, they conduct themselves as if death was something very remote to them, that it will never come to them. Kimascharcha mataparaha. What is more surprising than this? I think at least 3,000 years later, Julius Caesar of Shakespeare asked the same question in a different way. Of all the wonders I yet have heard, it seems to me most strange that man shall fear death, knowing fully well that it will come, the necessary end. Death is a necessary end. This phrase, necessary end, is a very significant phrase. Necessary from the very crude, gross point of view. I think sometimes in 1920s, W.A. Murray, the writer is not so very famous, but he was an anthropologist, American anthropologist. He wrote a book called Immortality. And he showed there that if all the people were immortal, there would be hardly any standing space for anybody upon the surface of the earth. That is the gross reality for it is a necessity. It is a necessity. But death is a necessity because, to quote again Sri Aurobindo, death is the reminder and a question nature puts to life. That's the question nature puts to life and a reminder that it has not found itself. Life has not yet found itself, and that is why death comes again and again to give a new chance to remind that it has to go on questing for the mystery of death. Vast subject, I will limit myself to how it has been treated in the Indian mystic lore, very briefly indeed. That also too is very vast subject. Sri Aurobindo says, since the beginning of human awareness, that is to say, from the time man became conscious of his consciousness, there have been 5 aspirations, unconsciously or consciously, that are guiding humanity in all its activities. And it has come back again and again as questions to him. Man's quest after God, light, freedom, bliss, and immortality. Now, a psychologist like Otto Rank very beautifully puts it. Every man, unconsciously or consciously, is seeking after immortality. Those who are enlightened ones, they believe in the immortality of the soul. That is their consolation. Then there are others who hitch their wagon to the star of a great ideology. They may die, but the ideology will live, and through the ideology they also survive. The third category, those who leave behind themselves some immortal work in art, sculpture, literature, and that is their way of seeking immortality. The average ordinary man find in the progeny, in the descendants, the children, the grandchildren, the continuity his own life, that is immortality. Now, this may be the psychological case with the average man, but then there have been great experiments, great questions, and great seekings in the mystic lore of India, beginning with the Vedas. I would not dare into the Vedic lore. I am too small a person to go into that. But as a writer, what I have seen, as a seeker, what I have seen, from the Upanishads, Puranas, Mahapuranas, epics, and the Upapuranas, there is a distinct sequence of struggle or revolt against death in the tradition of Indian literature. We must remember, death and consciousness are interlinked, almost inextricably intertwined. At the beginning of civilization, we can call it, before human beings were created, there were the devas and the demons, asuras. Asuras stood for all that is egoistic, all that is arrogant, cruel, and the devas were the promises of light and progress. The conflict, why did this happen? That is a different story, a $1 million question which requires probably another discussion. But the reality was that the conflict between the evil and the good. Now, both wanted immortality. On one point they became united, how to find the solution to the problem of death, the nectar that will emerge from Samudra Manthan, the churning of the ocean. That alone can ensure immortality, and both cooperated, and there was the mighty Samudra Manthan. Nectar came out of it after many other things, but it had to be seen by providence that it does not fall into the lot of the demons, asuras. It will be the end of the projected evolution upon the earth, because the terrible tyrannical attitude of them will never allow the consciousness to grow. Hence, their nectar went to the lot of the demons, to the devas. Once human beings are created, the quest continues. The first ever incident where the problem of death is squarely handled and a clear-cut answer is sought to be obtained, we find in the Kathopanishad, in the legend of Nachiketa. Very deceptively narrated. You see, the Upanishads are very serious texts, but again we have to be conscious about the meaning, because they write something like a story, but the meaning remains in between. It remains beneath the words. Now the story on the surface says there was a rishi called Vajasravas. He was performing a yajna. And this yajna, during this yajna, he must disposes himself of all the properties he has. He is distributing everything, including a very worn out cow. Young Nachiketa observes this and he thinks that father should not have given a good for nothing cow to somebody. Excuse me. And Nachiketa knew that the whole purpose of the yajna is to eliminate his attachment. The meaning of giving away is, I have no attachment for anything. So, the father's greatest attachment was for himself, for Nachiketa. But Nachiketa, the story does not show on the surface of it. Nachiketa goes to father and says, Father, you have given everything to everybody. What about me? Whom did you give away? Father does not answer. That is to say, father's attachment is strong. reminds Nachiketa, Father, whom did you give me away? As if the Rishi gets angry and he says, I give you to Yama, god of death. The story says, Nachiketa, without uttering a word of protest, goes to the residence of Yama, if there was a geographical located castle of Yama, and when he goes there, he sees that Yama, god of death, is not there. He waits for 3 days and 3 nights for Yama to come back. And when this compassionate god of death comes back, and he sees that this boy has waited for me 3 days and 3 nights, in lieu of his patience and his great humility, he grants him any 3 boons. Last boon Nachiketa asks him is, tell me the mystery of death. What happens to a person once his body falls? Yama seems as if scared out by boy. You ask for wealth, ask for long life, ask for prosperity, ask for wisdom. Why do you want to know something which is too deep and too complex and which is not within my rights even to reveal to you? No, once you promised to grant me any 3 boons, this is my last boon I seek, you have to say. Yama elaborately tells him about the mystery of soul. For the first time we see a clear picture of the truth of a human being's constitution. It is not merely the physical body, the emotional self, the life, or the thinking self, the mind, but beneath these 3 there is something else, the soul, the inner being, and that is immortal. That does not end with the end of life, end of the physical body. But this remains as a knowledge. How to translate this knowledge into reality in physical life, that is to say, is it possible ever to conquer death in other aspects of my being? We come then to another legend, the legend of Markandeya. You see, the symbolism we should not lose. In the story of Nachiketa, when the father says, I give you to Yama, what he means is, I commission you to make a research on the mystery of death. Yama symbolizing the ultimate knowledge of life and death. These are very symbolic. And when when he says, "Oh, now, etc., why Nachiketa should say that, ask, for whom did you give me away? Because he knew that father was most attached to him. Attachment must be snapped if the father is to successfully obtain the fruit of this yajna, the siddhi of this yajna. He must be totally liberated from any attachment to anybody. Now, we come to the next story about a great sage called Mrikanda, who probably lived near Prabhastirtha, and then Mrikanda was childless. He wanted a child. At the end of his long penance, he was given an alternative. You can have a child who will live for 100 years, but be an ordinary, foolish type of child. Or you can have a child who will be prodigy, but live only for 12 years. You choose. At the excitement of his siddhi, the Rishi wanted a child who will be genius. Thus a son was born to him, and he was named Markandeya, Mrikanda's son. And he was indeed a prodigy. At the age of 4 and 5, he was taking classes on the Vedas, and he was a great Rishi, acknowledged by other Rishis. But as the 11th year ended, father and mother started shedding tears. He observed them. Markandeya observed them. And then he asked, what is the matter? Why do you look so pensive? They would not immediately disclose, but ultimately, before this radiant prince of knowledge, they could not have kept their, unfortunate knowledge hidden. They had to reveal to him that, well, a few months hence, she will no longer be there. And then Markandeya tells them, leave it to me. Stop weeping, pray, but leave my fate to me. You must be having calendar pictures. Sometimes you will see Markandeya's Jama has come with a trisul, and he has come with a kind of pass, a kind of knot to capture him, and then Shiva's trisul is dispelling the Jama or his messengers, his ambassadors. So it is not like that. Markandeya retires to solitude and becomes totally engrossed in Shiva consciousness. Shiva, the other meaning of which is eternity, indestructible. And a time comes when he is totally identified with that Shiva consciousness which has no beginning, no end. The moment of his demise comes, emissaries of God of death come, but where is Markandeya? The individual Markandeya has ceased to exist. It is totally immersed in a light, in a eternity consciousness. There is no individualized boy called Markandeya. The moment passes, the emissaries return, and when moment has passed, moment for death, the law has become invalidated. A new calendar begins for the seeker's life. 7 rishis happen to pass by. He bows down to all the 7. Each one says, live long, and Markandeya lived indeed very long. It is an individual victory over death, undoubtedly. Then comes the next important myth, where a new element has entered, death vis-a-vis life. Life and death are not juxtaposed, they are not opposed to each other. Death is simply absence of life as we know it. But life and death are not opposite to each other. What is opposite to death? It is a love which is opposite to death. I suffer for somebody's death according to the degree of my love for the person. Now, we come to a third myth, a fourth myth, where you see the entry of this element of love into this legend. In the forest there lived a young man and a young girl, Ruru and Pramodpura. They were romantically involved with each other. They were to get married, but they were freely mixing with each other, and one day, early in the morning, Ruru has entered the forest for collecting some flowers to make a bouquet for his beloved Pramodpura. Pramodpura is waiting for him, prepared to chide him, take him to task why in the darkness he should enter the forest. As Ruru is coming back, suddenly he observes Pramodpura trembling and falling down. He comes near and sees a serpent, a white piece of lightning, just hiding inside the grass. It has bitten Pramodpura. Pramodpura falls dead. No, it must not happen. Ruru protests. And Pramodpura's eyes, as if they say, I am not prepared to die. Ruru is not prepared to accept this as death. With Pramodpura's body, like Shiva taking up the body of Sati, he begins wondering, but how long can he do that? There comes the intervention of the god of love, Madana. Madana gives him a secret by which he enters the nether worlds, where that part of the nether worlds where the spirit of the recently dead are kept, are waiting for their future, whatever it is. He enters that place, forbidden place, finds out the soul of Pramodpura and strikes a deal with Yama. He will give half of his life, remaining half of his life, with which Pramodpura should come back to life. And it happens. First time we see The conquest of death by love, a symbolic story, but still it is a compromise. I will be very short. Then comes the famous legend of Savitri. Savitri, the daughter of Ashwapati, the king of Mathura. Where is Mathura today? Afghanistan. That was Mathura Desha of the ancient India. And Kanya Tejaswini, she is a luminous girl. And the father is unable to find a suitable match for him. See the liberty the feminine world enjoyed at that time. And the king allows her, rather asks her, you go out and travel the wide world and find out your consort by yourself. So does Savitri, escorted by some wise ministers and bodyguards. And she comes to the kingdom of Sallo, where she meets Satyavan. Her blind Satyavan, his blind father and mother, exiled from their kingdom, Sallo, living in a forest. She meets him and she understands that she has met the person of her destiny. She comes back to her father. And you know the story from Mahabharata. You see, it is significant. In Mahabharata, this legend is being narrated to Yudhishthira by no other rishi than Markandeya, who had the credit of conquering death first, prior to it. One day while Yudhishthira tells Markandeya, who has visited him, about Draupadi, what a powerful character Draupadi is. Indeed, most misunderstood character, because we forget that she is not a human being. She is somebody who has emerged out of a yajna to serve only one purpose, elimination of the evil incarnated by the Kauravas. We think only 5 husbands and all that. She is not a human being. She cannot be judged by human standards. Anyway, that is a different aspect of the mythological truth. But when Yudhishthira speaks about Draupadi's greatness and wonders if there was another personality among the women of the world who could be compared to her, Markandeya says, yes, long ago there was a princess of Mathura. That means this is a legend which goes back prior to Mahabharata by a few centuries earlier than Mahabharata. So anyway, coming back to Savitri's episode, Savitri comes back after choosing her husband, comes back to her father and says that, well, I have found my bridegroom and allow me to get married now. Narada happens to be present there. Narada alone knew that Satyavan would live only for a year from that moment, no more than a year. So Narada warns the parents of Savitri, don't allow her to marry Satyavan, and also ask Savitri, my child, you make a different choice. Impossible, Savitri says. Once I have made my choice, it is unalterable. To cut short the story again, Savitri goes back to the forest, certainly without any dowry, to live with her. I mean, desolately living, parents-in-law and husband. Only Savitri knows the agonizing future awaiting her and her husband. She never reveals to anybody what a strain was, what a great exercise it must have been for her to retain her outward composure, to serve the blind father-in-law, the old mother, and to be faithful to the husband and to look after this little household. It was a colony of the rishis in the forest, and the prince Satyavan every day goes out to the forest to cut woods, to collect log, etc., etc. But she is quietly waiting. Can we say she is quietly waiting? She is quietly carrying on her tapasya inside within, gathering more and more strong through her ascesis. And the fateful day arrives, and she knows today is the last day of Satyavan's life, unless his destiny can be altered. That day, with the permission of her parents-in-law, she accompanies him to the forest. After some time, Satyavan feels giddy and he says, I do not know what has happened to me, but I'm exhausted, I must lie down, keeping her head on the lap of Savitri. He has practically passed away. With the force of her tapasya which she has gathered during this 1 year, in her occult vision she sees the invisible god of death appearing there to collect the soul of Satyavan and to go away. Leaving her own physical body in her occult self, she follows Satyavan's spirit and the god of death. Mahabharata says very, very cryptically again, God of death, as you know, he is very compassionate. And he looks at this, why are you following? You can't enter a horizon which is before me. Beyond that, you cannot come. Go back. I give you the boon. Boon after boon he goes on giving. In a psychological moment she asks, grant me that I will be the mother of 100 children and remain faithful to my husband. Yes. He has been caught. She has been hooked. How can she remain faithful to her husband and mother 100 children unless the husband has been restored to her? Outwitted, the god of death has restored Satyavan's soul to Satyavan's body. As I said, these stories are very symbolic. Thousands of years later, glory to Indian literature, the heritage tradition of Indian literature, Savitri legend remained alive, was kept alive by the women folk of India. Savitri Amavasya. That is the date on which Savitri was born, that is the day when Satyavan was to die. Now, they have worshipped Savitri. She was herself an incarnation of a godhead. Now, Sri Aurobindo picks up out of Indian mythology this story, writes his epic Savitri, a legend and a symbol. The subheadline of the epic is a legend and a symbol. To cut short the story again, one day, the tapasya of the great result of one's ascesis, one's strenuous yogic exercise, had erased death from the destiny of one individual. One day the flow of divine love alone can erase death from the destiny of mankind. As you know, Sri Aurobindo is not to be equaled with philosophers, other saints and everything. He is a futurologist. He is a rishi who sees the future of man. Man is still evolving. The power of evolution, at least from spiritually viewed, has not become bankrupt with the development of the present half animal, half god human beings. It is going on. But at the present stage, it has come to a crisis. Sri Aurobindo terms it as an evolutionary crisis. A new force has to descend and not the critical condition and pave way for a new power to manifest in present human consciousness, to transform the human consciousness and thereby to divinize the human life, including the physical body. It may appear far-fetched, but this vision of Sri Aurobindo, just as animals could not have conceived of the evolution of man, we may not be able to conceive of the evolution of what he termed the supramental race. But certainly the divine providence did not have, the concluding scene of the present humanity as the finale. Drop cannot just come down with this evolutionary stage. There has to be something beyond it. When you look from Sri Aurobindo's theory, every great philosopher, every great man has taken man as he is for granted. But he sees the potentially evolving consciousness in every human being. Hence, our attitude to history, attitude to psychology, attitude to every problem must undergo a big change when we look at human beings as not as they are, but as they are yet to evolve. Now, the concept of immortality of soul, I was thrilled to discover. You must have discovered also, many of you, maybe not very consciously, not confined to India. The title of my talk is The Riddle of Sphinx. I am sure most of you have read in your student days the story of Sphinx, a strange creature of the city of ancient Thebes on a mountain. There sat a strange creature. The face of a woman, the body of a lion, a serpent for its tail, paws of a dog, strange amalgamation. And the road that passed by this mountain, he kept an eye on the road. Whenever a traveler is, in those days there were rare travelers, there was no tourism, there were no planes, there were no trains, walkers were very few, and the moment he see, I don't know, see or he or it, the moment it sees a passerby, shouts, "Stop!" And the traveler, surprised, stops, looking at the strange creature. Already one is nervous. Then she would say, let me call she, the face of the woman after all. Answer my question if you want to remain alive before sunset. If you cannot, you forfeit your life. What is the question? Name the creature who walks in the morning on 4 legs. As the day grows, he walks on 2 legs. In the evening, he walks on 3 legs. Who is the creature? No traveler can answer this question. They will scratch their head, they will go mad, and the sun will go down. The terrific Sphinx will pounce upon the hapless traveler and tear him asunder. One day, the great hero Oedipus happened to pass by. The moment the question was asked, his simple answer was, "I am the answer." Now it is for Sphinx to be taken aback. What do you mean by you are the answer? Man. The infant, toddler of the man, the child crawls on all fours, 2 hands and 4 legs, 2 hands and 2 legs. As the day grows, means as he grows up, he walks on 2 legs. In the evening of his life, he takes recourse to a stick, 3 legs. And the significant conclusion of the riddle is, the moment this answer has been given, Sphinx jumps to its own death. That means death was an illusion. It is a big question, again coming down to philosophy. If life is illusion, death is real. If death is illusion, life is real. From the highest point of view, both life and death are reals, but life is the eternal reality. Death is a relative reality. It comes to allow life to proceed further along the ways of experience, new environment, new situations, new experiences, all gathered by the inner being, paving the way for a degree more of progress. Unless you are a yogi who is striving for progress in this life, more and more through your consciousness. Now, so this mystery of the soul being the real person, and the day man has known his soul, death ceases to exist. This knowledge had been ingrained in some of the primeval great civilizations like Egyptian and Greek civilization probably. And Sri Aurobindo certainly discovers it from the Vedic laws. If you can read Sri Aurobindo's interpretation of the Vedas, you will find how the hymn to immortality has been there in such a concealed way, concealed manner. I do not propose to proceed further, dear friends. I think I have spoken enough about, it is still an introduction to the issue of love and death in Indian myths. I must conclude with a great, though Ravi's death is a tragedy for us and for me, there is a great element of consolation in it. He expired on 24th of November 2006. 24th of November, spiritually speaking, is a great significant day on which day Sri Aurobindo achieved his siddhi of the what he calls the overmental consciousness. Krishna consciousness came down upon the earth consciousness, paving the way for a further development of consciousness. 24th of November is a great day, and that day, this seeker, this child of truth, Ravi Kapur, he decided to leave his body. Dear friends, thank you very much for your having lent me a patient ear. I am very grateful to NIAS, Malavika ji, thank you very much, and President Sir, Lakant ji, and Rajani ji, all thank you very much for your interest. Thank you.
If there are any questions on that, probably both are welcome. Couple of questions.
So I just remember a beautiful song by Tagore. A song by Tagore, where the last line is, Death, মরণ বলে আমি তোমার জীবন তরি পাই. Death says that I know the boat of life.
Tagore, described by Sri Aurobindo, the prince of Gandharvas, he had certain touches of supernatural experiences. For him, Maranare to whom our Shama Saman, in Bharat Singh Padavali, the first line, Death, you are like my Sham, my Krishna to me. So that is, there are many approaches to death in Indian literature. One is to befriend the very concept of death, and there is a certainly wise attitude, no doubt about it, but there are also other attitudes.
Yes, please.
Is death in animal and plants are being treated differently than death in humans?
Yes, yes, actually, when we speak of consciousness, I am speaking from I am a layman, from a layman's language also I am speaking. Look at a human being. Broadly speaking, there are two aspects of a human personality. One is the gross physical body, what we call matter, Jada, who is Panchabhuta, all five Jadas, matters. And the other is consciousness. Now, this consciousness actually has three distinct areas from the mystic point of view. One is life. Life is all pervasive. In plant, in insect, in molecules, everywhere there is life. And when you go deeper and deeper into it, you see matter through his life. Because, as you know, I am not the person to speak, but in the ultimate analysis, what remains is energy. What remains as energy is cannot be matter of our concept. The whole concept of matter is changed by that time. And this energy, infused with a little awareness, becomes consciousness. Now, the entire world of vegetables, as you say, the trees, plants, they are manifestations of life. Life is all pervasive. But out of this life is emerged mind. Out of mind, Sri Aurobindo believes will emerge something called supermind. I can refer to a small incident, one. Anyway, I know I won't go into details, it will take time. But just a rustic expressing his, when somebody told him, somebody was lecturing about the future of mankind, that one day man will evolve into something supermind and all that. Some people were very skeptic, looking at the present condition of human beings when each one is eager to cut the throat of others. You think that this man will become divine? A retired primary school headmaster, matriculate, he overhears and he answers, look at that lake in front of my cottage. Sometimes early morning I see that a lotus has bloomed out of the mud with the grace of sunlight. Out of mud, out of filth. When I look at that, I wonder, why not out of the filth that is present in human consciousness, with the grace of the divine, the lotus of supramental cannot blossom? Why not? So this development, life is all pervasive. Mind is something, as you know, Manu is the beginner of mankind. So Manos, Manusya, Manav, all they are related. And we, the mental beings, have the promise of gradual growth and evolution, life after life. So that is the situation. Regard to vegetable world, it is all life is passing, fading, passing, recreating itself always. Yeah.
Actually, I was just thinking, what is required for a common man to achieve higher order of consciousness? What is the requirement? How a common man can achieve higher order of consciousness?
When you want to achieve engineering degree, you try for it. When you want to achieve artistry, you try for it. When you want to achieve excellence in music, you try for it. So when a common man wants to achieve something higher in consciousness, he is to strive for that. And that is the simplest meaning of yoga. In terms of yoga day is coming. I think last year on this day I had written an article for the Hindu where I had explained yoga means, please suppose as yoga, that is separation from something. And again we are trying the union. Yoga means again coming together. And so all the problems are problems of separation, because I am separated from the source of light and knowledge. I am immersed in ignorance. My effort to go back there is yoga, and when one wants to become higher, rise higher and higher in consciousness, one should try for that, and that is yoga. But this yoga is not necessarily limited to a few physical exercise or meditation. It is an attitude. I can give you a small example, don't mind, because you are all intellectuals here. This example is for a man like me who was very much inspired by it. When the Konarak temple was being built, you know Konarak temple, isn't it? Sun temple. So the founder, King Narasimha, he was in the habit of putting on a disguise and supervising the works. One day, he sees 4 laborers chiseling stones. So he steps behind one of them and asks, "My friend, what are you doing?" He looks back and he gets very annoyed. "What am I doing? Don't you see what am I doing?" "I'm cutting stone." All right. The king moves the second laborer and asks him, "What are you doing?" "Earning my livelihood. I'm making money income for my family, that's all." He moves the third one, asks, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Obeying the orders of the king." But when he asks the question, the fourth one, the answer is, he's in ecstasy. "What a grand opportunity for me. I am contributing my might to the invocation of the sun god of the earth." He is also earning his living, he is also cutting the stone, he is also obeying the king, but he is doing yoga. By uniting his action, whatever it is, with the concept of divinity. So, all life is yoga, that is Swagar of Sivarami. In his work, Synthesis of Yoga, the second subheadline is all life is yoga. It is a personal attitude, because you did not create yourself. If you analyze, you see the environment in which you are put. You are not the maker of the environment even. Hundreds of factors have come together and the environment has been treated for you. Yes, we have free will, but even the free will also is conditioned by several other factors. So, the proposition comes to this conclusion that there is a force which is guiding our life, molding the situations. And if I try to become in contact with a particular source, then I am trying to unite myself with it. The attitude to life becomes different. Everything becomes different.
I think there are no more questions. And as a last, please, can I ask you a question?
Please, sir.
The two great thinkers of the last century, Aurobindo and also Mahatma Kentish Kumaraswamy, talked about the Kathopanishad in the context of death. We would like to know from you what they were telling to us.
Sri Aurobindo has not spoken about death in relation to Kathopanishad. But the Nasiketa examples which I gave, that is from Kathopanishad. So from the introductional story which I gave, you can easily understand that certainly there is nothing as death as we understand it. The soul is immortal, and those who are conscious of their soul, the first sign of death is complete elimination of any fear for death. There is no question of any fear for death. And the more and more one realizes the soul, and I think people are becoming more and more conscious of it. In 1985, the World Health Organization, WHO, sent a very significant communication to the Director General of Health Services, Government of India, Dr. Jaswant Bist. The sum and substance of the document was that, you see, again I'm putting it in a layman's language. Suppose for a psychological case, two persons suffering from same symptoms of psychological aberration, coming from same cultural backdrop, with the same educational status, same health constituents, same aberrations are treated in the same way. The response to treatment is being monitored. After some time it is found, patient A remains where he was. Patient B has suddenly recovered. Now, the response of patient A to the physical response, mental response, emotional response were being recorded, being monitored. They are not different from the response of B. But A remains where he was, B recovers. That means, is there something else apart from body, mind and life and the environment which, according to the common law, constitute the elements of health? Is there something else there? Is there a fourth dimension of health? Dr. Bist and Narayan Reddy was the director at that time. They convened a very, very serious workshop at NIAS of some of the India's top psychiatrists, psychologists, and physicians, etc. They also invited 2 or 3 students of mysticism. I was one of them. There the resolution was ultimately, it is time for World Health Organization to take cognizance of the fourth dimension of human self called soul. But since soul is a worn out word associated with religion, this and that, let us call factor X. So the fourth dimension, there is one that is being gradually recognized today, but it is still limited. All that Sri Aurobindo said about faith is, it is not something which is unsurmountable. As I remember, before Soviet Union collapsed, there was one great physicist called IISc. He brought out a strange theory. He says death is a bad habit because man sees animals dying. He subconsciously takes for granted that he is obliged to die. But the built-in process in human mechanism is such that it goes on recreating itself. Everything in human being is going on recreating itself. So man ought not to die. But that is a hypothesis which could not be pursued. I am debating from your question, sir. But because Sri Aurobindo has in many words spread over the whole 35 volumes of his works, he has said that, well, death is something, an enigma which has to be solved. As I say, death is a question nature puts to life and a reminder that it has not yet found itself. Life is to find the answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Manoj Das, and thank you, Professor Shetter, for chairing this session. As a token of our gratitude for coming over here and delivering this lecture, I would request Professor Shetter to present a certificate to Professor Manoj Das. I now request my colleague Anshuman Behra to present the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my honor to say vote of thanks to Professor Manoj Das. Before I do that, I beg your forgiveness to say a few words about half a minute about Professor Malvika Kapur for introducing me to Professor R.L. Kapur. On 25th of last month, he gifted me 2 books of R.L. Kapur. One is on the psyche of terrorists in Kashmir, and the other is on the alienation of youth in 20th century. I must confess that I've been a student of terrorism for some time now. I have never come across such a writing. There are some professors who are working on the psyche of terrorists in Indonesia, in Australia, in America, but such a scholarly work I have never come across. Thank you, ma'am, for that. As I'm reading the pages, I've read almost 20 odd pages, but each page I read, my ignorance actually grows more and more. Thank you for that. And I have no words to thank Professor Manoj Das. You have been my inspiration for going through Odia literature. And you have been inspiration for many young people in Odisha, and not only in Odisha, in India also. I was educated by Mr. Ramakrishnan Devaraju before the session began, that his association with NIAS is very long, and his association has been from the time of Professor Rajaramana. And I hope the association will remain so for many years to come, sir. And I, on behalf of NIAS fraternity and Professor Malvika Kapur and Professor Shetter, I would like to thank you for such an insightful lecture on death and love. And I thank all the audience for making it to the day. Thank you very much for coming.
It's a nice ambience.